Welcome to the Southwest Desert, a channel that explores the fascinating stories, legends, and mysteries of the Southwest Desert. In today's episode, we'll be diving into the intriguing tale of the Lost Organ Grinder's Ledge, a story that has captivated treasure hunters and history buffs for generations. Was it a genuine lost gold mine of incredible richness, or just another tall tale spun around the campfires of old Arizona? The story of the Lost Organ Grinder's Ledge was first recounted by an old Arizona desert rat and prospector named Bill Bear. Bear was a colorful character, a longtime prospector, trapper, and a squaw man, a white man married to a Native American woman. In his later years, he shared a remarkable tale, claiming it took place back in the early 1860s, the early days of the Arizona Territory. According to Bear, 3 Italian organ grinders were making the long overland journey from the Colorado River town of La Paz to Granite Creek near the territorial capital of Prescott. Organ grinders were a common sight in those days, roving musicians who wandered from town to town earning meager coins with their music. These men each had a small hand-cranked street organ and a trained monkey that would collect tips from onlookers. As Bear told it, the 3 Italians paused one scorching day to rest in the shade of a mesquite tree. There, they found an old Mojave Native American collapsed on the ground, nearly dead from heat and thirst. Taking pity on the man, the Italians shared precious water from their canteens and what little food they could spare. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan on another desert adventure. Please leave a like or comment. For further Southwest adventures, hit the subscribe button. The Native American was deeply grateful for the kindness these strangers had shown him. In halting Spanish, he told the organ grinders he wanted to repay them by showing them the location of an incredibly rich gold mine. The Italians were initially hesitant, questioning the old Mojave about how valuable this mine could really be. In response, he simply bent down, scooped up a fistful of pebbles from the desert floor, and declared mucho, mucho oro, lo mismo esta, as he swept his arm out towards the horizon, indicating the mine was as full of gold as the ground was full of rocks, and that the deposit was a massive one. That was all the Italians needed to hear. They quickly gathered their belongings and prepared to follow the old Mojave deep into the wilderness. He led them on a challenging 2-day march across the blazing Arizona desert until they finally reached the Santa Maria River. On the 3rd day, they entered a small, deep canyon in the hills north of Peoples Valley. At their destination, they found a spring of fresh, clean water trickling out from beneath a large boulder, sustaining a couple of cottonwood trees at the bottom of the ravine. The prospectors made camp at the spring as the Native American guide gestured to the west and simply said, "Busca," hunt. He then laid down on the ground, rolled a cigarette, and promptly ignored the Italians, apparently feeling his obligation to them was fulfilled. Enthused by the Native Americans' vague directions, the Italians hurried off to the west. Only a few hundred yards from camp, in a tributary ravine, they spotted an unusual outcropping of dark rock. When they broke off a chunk of the stone, they were amazed to see that it glittered with gold in the fading sunlight. Every new piece they chipped off was thickly laced with the precious yellow metal. The Italians sat down together at the discovery site, awestruck by their fantastic luck and lost in dreams of the fortunes they would make. They stayed there marveling at their gold samples until the sun began to set and darkness drove them back to camp. As they hiked back down the ravine, they found the old Mojave guide snoring by the campfire. The Italians, however, were far too excited to sleep, their minds filled with visions of newfound wealth. At first light, they returned to the outcrop and gathered several sacks worth of rich gold ore and large nuggets that had weathered out of the vein. Once they had all the ore they could carry, the Italians carefully concealed all signs of the outcropping to hide it from any other prospectors who might happen through the area. They sketched out a rough map of the region, including prominent landmarks and a clear depiction of the trail from the Santa Maria to the spring and gold mine. Satisfied with their efforts, they departed the hidden canyon as the sun began to set, planning to travel at night to avoid the searing desert heat and reduce the chances of encountering the Hualapai Native Americans, who were enemies of the Mojave and known to attack intruders in their territory. After an uneventful night of walking, the Italian organ grinders and their guide reached Tres Alamos Springs, where they gratefully made camp for the night. They planned to rise early and make the final push to Wickenburg, the closest frontier settlement, where they could stake their mining claims and gather supplies to begin working the incredibly rich gold deposit they had discovered. But their plans were shattered in the dark hour just before the dawn. The exhausted prospectors were startled out of their sleep by blood-curdling war whoops as Hualapai warriors attacked the camp. In a furious onslaught, the war party slew the old Mojave guide and two of the luckless Italians. The third organ grinder managed to slip away in the chaos, temporarily concealed in a thicket of dense brush. The attack was over as swiftly as it had begun. The Hualapai braves snatched up a few items from the camp and then hastily retreated, apparently concerned that cavalry troopers from nearby camp date might have heard the commotion and would soon arrive on the scene. Once he was certain the hostile natives had departed, the surviving Italian crept back into the ravaged camp. In a gesture of respect for his slain comrades, he gathered up their bodies and placed them side by side, piled dry brush over the corpses, and set the makeshift funeral pyre ablaze. He then collected the pouches of rich gold samples the party had mined. As a last step, he penned a brief account of their discovery and placed the note and the map of the gold mine in a small metal box that had once been part of one of the ruined organs. He carefully cached the box under a boulder beside the trail. His final act before departing the sad scene was an odd one. He released the Italians' 3 trained monkeys into the wilderness by the spring. The little capuchin monkeys scampered off into the rocks, doomed to either perish in the desert or somehow adapt and survive on their own. Carrying the heavy bags of gold-laced quartz, the heartbroken but determined organ grinder set out across the desert alone, aiming for the tiny village of Wickenburg. But the rigors of the trail, the searing summer heat, and his meager water supply soon took their toll. 2 days after the Hualapai attack, a Mexican teamster named Francisco Gonzalez was driving his wagon from the Weaver Creek mines towards Wickenburg. As he rolled down the track, he spotted a figure lying face down in the sand a short distance ahead. Gonzalez halted his team and hurried over to investigate. He found the unfortunate Italian sprawled on the desert floor, barely clinging to life and still clutching the sacks of gold ore in his hands. Gonzalez gently loaded the dying man into his wagon and gave him water. The organ grinder briefly revived and, in broken Spanish, he gasped out the story of the lost mine and the Apache attack to Gonzalez. But the ordeal had been too much. He succumbed to his injuries and perished before the wagon rolled into Wickenburg. And that, according to Old Bill Bear, is the story of the lost organ grinder's ledge, a tale of tragedy, betrayal, and a fortune in gold that remains hidden to this day. The sole surviving Italian took the secret of the mine's location to his grave, leaving behind only the tantalizing rumor of the fabulous strike. Treasure hunters and prospectors have scoured the canyons and arroyos north of the Santa Maria River in search of the gold-laced outcropping for more than a century, but the ledge has never been found. Thank you for joining me on this lost gold journey. Please leave a like or comment. For further desert romps, hit the subscribe button. Happy trails!